The Leafs were wheeling and dealing, and now they're also making other moves ahead of the NHL trade deadline. We'll look at that and more on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your daily fix for all things Leafs. I'm your host, David Morassutti from Sportsnet, and back from vacation just in time. It's my co-host, Mike Distefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. And you can catch us now on YouTube at Locked On Leafs. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. So on today's show, we got lots to digest here, folks, because the Toronto Maple Leafs, they got him, Mike. Gio's coming to town.
So Gio's coming home.
He's coming home after a long time away from home, playing from home, I should say, away from home. We're gonna discuss that deal, along with some. Leafs had to make a flurry of moves even to just get to this point. So we're gonna discuss, Travis Dermott being shipped out of town, Petr Mrazek getting thrown on waivers, and a certain goaltender from the KHL who is returning to the NHL after a few years overseas. And of course, we've got a flurry of moves going on around the league. A lot of teams in the Atlantic Division were busy. So we're going to take a look at all those. And of course, we still have a trade deadline. Whether trades are going to be made, there'll be a couple. But boy, if you have a 6-hour show to do on Monday, good luck. Because I know it's going to be there'll be some things to talk about.
Yeah.
But in terms of actual trades, oh boy, every year I feel for these guys. It's always the same thing every time.
Yeah, all these trades come down like a week ahead, sometimes 2 weeks ahead. There's usually like one day where like one trade happens and then just it snowballs from there. And that seemed to be the case like this weekend, right? We finally saw some stuff. This week it kind of trickled out throughout the week though, but it's like after the Manson deal happened, and then we saw Lindholm go, and we saw Ben Sherratt got traded as well right there in that time. Claude Giroux ended up getting dealt, and we just saw a whole flurry of moves kind of come throughout the week. And then finally the Maple Leafs, who were late to the party, we saw a defenseman come off the trade bait board one by one. And it's like, oh no, the Maple Leafs are going to lose out on a defenseman. And then lo and behold, we wake up this afternoon. Well, I woke up this afternoon because, long story short, didn't get to bed until very, very early this morning. But I wake up to some terrific news that the Maple Leafs have acquired Mark Giordano. I think it's a good pickup, Dave. Like I do. I think that this is great. They give up 2 second-round picks and a third-round pick. But what I think is notable about this is the fact that none of these draft picks are in the same year. Right? So this year's second, next year's second, and then the following year, 2024, third-round pick. So they kind of didn't give up too many draft picks in the same year. And then they quickly followed up with a trade, sending out Travis Dermott to Vancouver, picking up a third-round pick to kind of replenish, I guess, that third-round draft pick. So Gio in, Dermott out. They also brought in Colin Blackwell, who's like a bottom 6 player. I think this is going to be a sneaky pickup, by the way. Colin Blackwell. I think that he could do a lot kind of in your bottom 9. He's a guy who's played with Yanni Gourde. He played with Artemi Panarin a little bit last year. So is he someone who in a pinch you could play up with your top six, perhaps, but he's also somebody who's a little bit burly, a little bit of a rugged game. You can chuck him in your bottom six, brings us some size, something a little different. If you need it, he could play the wing, he could play down the middle. So I think Colin Blackwell's an actually like a nice sneaky addition to this trade. Like Mark Giordano, he's going to be the one who gets all the accolades. He's going to get the headline in the paper tomorrow morning. But Colin Blackwell is a pretty good addition as well. But Mark Giordano, I mean, this guy's a Norris Trophy winner, somebody who really still playing at a high level right now. I think that this is going to be a real solid pickup for the Maple Leafs, both on the ice, off the ice. My question is, though, Dave, like, what does the D pairing look like at this point now? Because for a while we're thinking they got to get a right shot defenseman. They got to get someone on the right side. And then Muzzin goes down. It's like, okay, maybe they can go to the left side. And then when we saw the Brody and Hall pairing working so well, it's like, okay, maybe they do attack the right side. Maybe find someone to pair with Morgan Riley full time. And, you can work from there. But they don't. They get a left shot defenseman. And now I'm just curious, how do all the puzzle pieces work when it comes to the Maple Leafs, or when rather, not an if, because we know he's going to be back pretty soon when Jake Muzzin returns. What does this D core look like when fully healthy?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out myself. Everyone's been kind of going with the logical. You're bringing in Mark Giordano. You're bringing him back to play with his former defensive partner in TJ Brody.
Yeah,
That just feels like the natural fit, because while I think TJ Brody and Justin Hall haven't been bad, I just think that you will have a
I
definitive
think they've been
shutdown
good.
line.
I think they've been good, actually, like that pairing. Like I've liked Brody and Hall together personally, and splitting them up. I mean, I guess you could do it, but now I'm thinking, where does Justin Hall fit? Who's played much better hockey recently? And if Muzzin's returning, you're going to put him back with Jake Muzzin? They don't seem to play very well together. You're going to put him with Morgan Riley? I don't know, because Justin Hall kind of needs somebody to drive him. He can't be like defensively, someone who could play defensively. That is, and Justin or Morgan Riley's not really going to be that. So now I just wonder how everything's going to kind of unfold here.
Yeah, and I think that if you're bringing in Mark Giordano, he's playing in the top four. Like, you're not bringing in Mark Giordano to play. I know some people saying, "Oh, look at his age and all those things." Mark Giordano is still a very good defensive defenseman. He might not be the Norris candidate that scored over 70 points a few years ago, but I still think what he brings defensively, you got to go with the guys I think that have been there and done it. Justin Hall has had his struggles this year. He has played better, but I also just think that if you play Justin Hall in a situation where he might thrive better, which means not against the top competition in a third pairing role, he might even be even better than no. And I think with Labushkin playing with Riley the last few days, I think they really like what that pairing can do. We've been calling for it. We've been asking for it. You missed a whole week of Labushkin and Riley playing together.
I know.
It's been good. In Nashville, it wasn't as good, although there wasn't a lot of good things in that Nashville game defensively from a few people. But I think the good thing here is that maybe there's a little more versatility with where you can move guys. And I also wonder if this is just also an indictment of maybe Jake Muzzin. They're not really planning too much for him to be a big contributor in the playoffs. I mean, in that case, maybe going the LTIR route for the rest of the season would have made more sense and try to use that cap space. But I mean, we don't know if that's for sure yet because we still have another day to figure all that out.
That's right. I mean, that's still not off the table, right? Like that's not off the table. They can tomorrow wake up, put them on LTIR, and say, you know what, we will wait, because we at this point have kind of filled in. I mean, they don't play similar style of game, right? Like Mark Giordano's more of a two-way guy, and Muzzin's more of a more of a bruiser. Like he's more defensive minded than Giordano. Not to say that Gio's not, but you know what I mean. Like they don't play a similar style of hockey. But when it comes to Gio, I guess you follow Jay Fresh, correct?
Yep, of course.
So he puts out like every single time a trade happens or someone gets talked about, he always puts out his like war charts. And we look at Mark Giordano and what he's been able to do over the last few seasons. He's 80 percentile in even strength defense. So he's a guy who defends very well. And that's exactly what this team needs, right? He needs somebody who can defend 76 percentile in the penalty kill. So he's somebody who can kill some penalties for you if you need him to. So that's something that I really like about it. And you look at his goals per 60 when he's out on the ice, and it's 76%. We know that Gio has, Norris caliber player. He's not a massive goal scoring threat, but he's a good playmaker. He's got a great first pass. Actually, you know what? Why don't we quickly play the clip that we have from Mike Kelly? Do we have that?
Yep, I am going to pull that up right now, actually.
Perfect. And this is the beauty of us being able to use YouTube now. And if you're not on following us on YouTube, you can go check it out, Locked On Leafs. We can play videos and whatnot. So this is a quick analysis here from Mike Kelly from The Point Hockey, also with the NHL Network, and his analysis of Mark Giordano and what he could bring to the Toronto Maple Leafs this season.
Well, after watching division rivals Florida, Tampa Bay, and Boston get in on the trade action, the Toronto Maple Leafs make a move of their own, acquiring Mark Giordano from the Seattle Kraken. Now, aside from the obvious, this is a guy who can play all situations. He's a leader. He is a veteran. Here are a few things Maple Leaf fans are absolutely going to love about Giordano. Number one, this guy's a play killer. He kills plays at the blue line. He kills plays in the defensive zone. One of the better defensemen in the league in terms of shutting down cycle plays, uses his body, his stick, really effective in that area, which will help a Maple Leafs defense that's actually better than most people think already. Also, rarely ever turns the puck over. Year over year, Mark Giordano has one of the lowest turnover rates among defensemen in the National Hockey League. And also, he snaps a pretty good first pass out of the defensive zone as well. So just continuing that play killing, get the puck out, get it out effectively up to those talented offensive Toronto Maple Leaf forwards. Those are some of the things Leaf fans are going to love about this guy. Also, how about the fact that he'll be reunited with TJ Brodie, who was his defense partner in Calgary when he won the Norris Trophy in 2019. They had an expected goal rate that year of almost 60%, so maybe look for that to be a new second pair for Toronto. Now, the last month and a half, the Maple Leafs, 28th in goals against. This is not mainly because of team defense. They've actually been pretty good in terms of expected goals recently and all season. It's mainly been a goaltending issue, but in the absence of there being great goalies out there on the market, they go out and get a really good defenseman, a guy who can play really good shutdown D, which will only continue to help as the Maple Leafs try to shore things up overall defensively.
So there you go. So he brings a lot to this team, and what they need is like a true defensive defenseman, someone who can kill plays, somebody who can break up, the cycle, also pretty good breaking up the rush. He's got a good stick. He's got that great outlet pass. So, that's the guy who you want, who's going to break up a play and then give the puck up to Marner or Matthews or Nylander on a good stretch play and have that man go in and make something of it. So there wasn't many offensively talented players in Seattle to help this guy when it came to, utilizing that good first pass. There's a lot of offensive firepower here in Toronto where they accept that pass and they go over into the neutral zone, or they go into the offensive zone. They're going to make plays. They're going to make things happen. And having a guy who can get that from the back end all the way up to your forwards, that's a pretty good skill to possess on a team that's got as much talent as they do up front. So not only is he going to help, in my opinion, the blue line, but also indirectly also help the goaltending, but also the forwards by having somebody who can get them the puck almost as good as anyone else in the game.
I kind of think that's where that TJ Brodie, Justin Hall line at times wasn't as successful because they did get hemmed in their zone quite a bit. No, TJ Brodie is capable of getting the puck out of the zone. Mm-hmm. I just think it's going to be much easier when it's Mark Giordano going to be relied on to make that first pass, as you saw. And I think the offensive instincts, maybe Mark Giordano will be allowed to bring a little bit more of that now that he's moving from Seattle to Toronto. So we do have some other moves to talk about. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, we're going to take a short break and we're going to hear from one of our sponsors. and that is our good friends over at Athletic Greens, a product that I started using recently because I've had a really hard time making sure that I'm taking all the necessary, vitamins, supplements. There's just so many different things you can take. I'm one of those guys where one thing, that's all I need to do. And that's what Athletic Greens does for you. So, what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. So you must take at least one of these a day. You put it in some water, you shake it. It's almost like you're having like a protein shake. It's pretty good for you. When we talk about what's important about this is obviously the importance of multivitamins. Tons of people talk about there's some kind of multivitamin, and it's important to choose one with high quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. AG1, which is in Athletic Greens, is also known as AG1. It's a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every day to take care of yourself. If you get a subscription with them, it will come with a year's supply of vitamin D, which in today's age is super important to add in these, especially in the winter months. We're getting to the sunlight, but it's not fully there yet. So this is something that Athletic Greens can help with. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season, which especially with the weather warming up, the body's going to take some time to adjust. So it's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, as athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. And of course, returning from his vacation is Mike Distefano. He's refreshed. He's ready for this grind, the final grind of the season. David Morassutti here as well. Man, it wasn't just the Giordano trade. We talked about the Mrazek deal. We talked about, Travis Dermott's now out of town. The Atlantic Division has been, I think, taken over. It just went super nuclear the last week. It really started with Florida getting Ben Sherratt.
Yeah.
A lot. I talked about this with Tony Ferrari the other day, where the first round pick and getting a prospect, going the other way to Montreal, kind of threw everything kind of out of whack, because then it kind of set the expectation of what other players are getting.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot. Like, I didn't get a chance to comment on that, I suppose, but like, to me, that seemed very, very much a high price to pay. And I think it stemmed from also Brendan Hagel getting 2 first round picks
Dude, I was
and 2 former top 60 prospects in the draft. Like, it was kind of a bizarre deal, that one. And then Sherratt deal got followed up. And then Manson only took a second in a prospect. I'm like, what is going on with these trades? Like, it's the value seems
even
to be
the
all over
Hampus
the place.
Lindholm one.
And then you see Hampus Lindholm, which an extension may have already been in the works, and that factored into the deal.
Yeah.
But then you look at it, it's like, okay, the Leafs only paid 2 seconds and a third for Giordano and Blackwell. It just, when you line it up to the rest of the defensemen and the rest of those trades that were made, I think the Leafs probably, Manson was pretty good value too, a second and a pretty decent prospect. But the Leafs, I think, made out like bandits when you look at what the prices were with some of the other trades that were made around the league for some of these other top 4 defensemen.
Yeah, and all things considering, when you look at what the Leafs were potentially going to have to pay to get a Brandon Hagel and a Marc-Andre Fleury, multiple first-round picks, Matthew Nyes, and then Chicago potentially taking Petr Mrazek. Like, I know that you're trying with Tampa, it's just we're all about winning with this core now, going for the 3-peat. The Leafs haven't gotten there yet, so it's almost like another miss at the trade deadline. I know Brandon Hagel is around for a couple of years, but talking with people I know, like people who've watched Matthew Nyes, you would rather have a Matthew Nyes coming down your pipeline, and we're hearing it could be sooner rather than later. Like this isn't a guy who's
Yeah.
When I heard Ellie Friedman say he could be a factor in April, I'm like, ooh, that kind of changes the equation a little bit, I think, of why Dubas didn't want to move some of these guys. And as you said, with the Lindholm trade, I understand that way more for Boston now that they got the 8-year extension done. Because I guarantee there's no way
Still a lot.
Boston is doing that. Oh, yeah. Is like, remember when everyone was making fun of the Leafs for trading 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick for Phil Kessel? Which
Yeah, that
I
was also
obviously,
still a lot.
let's also not forget the Leafs should have probably lottery protected those picks. That was
Yeah.
that was probably the mistake and all that. But multiple first round picks for Brandon Hagel, I just don't. And as you said, multiple prospects, I just don't get that. And the other one with Anaheim, they did well to get a lot for Vatanen and a decent return for Josh Manson. When you see the deal that that Lindholm signed, how does Anaheim not get that deal done? 8 years, 6.5 per.
Yeah. It's kind of bizarre because that seems like a pretty good number for a guy who got locked in as like a top 3 defenseman, like your best defenseman probably also. I mean, Jamie Drysdale is clearly a guy who could emerge to be a top pair type of player, but yeah, it's really it was kind of an interesting situation. But hey, they thought that they weren't going to be able to reach an agreement there, and maybe Lindholm just didn't want to play in Anaheim anymore. And if that's the case, they didn't want to sign him, getting a first, 2 seconds, Urho Vakanainen, which is a mouthful. He's a former first round pick himself, and then they picked up John Moore's salary as well to kind of play there. So they got a young defenseman who's probably not going to turn into a Hampus Lindholm, but they got a first round pick, couple of seconds. They made out like bandits. I thought Boston paying a heavy price as they typically do at the deadline. Seems like Boston always likes to go balls to the wall. But yeah, the Brendan Hagel deal to me was just asinine. That was way too much to give up for him. I know he's under contract and he's super cheap for this year and next, and it's like kind of has the Barkley Goudreau situation written all over it, which
I was even going to say the Blake Coleman trade. That's
same thing, right? And both those trades turned out pretty well. They ended up winning 2 cups with those guys, so it turned out okay. And then they followed it up and they made another deal tonight, picking up Nick Paul for from the Ottawa Senators. So they're trying to recreate that third line that left. Now they got Nick Paul, and they got the player I was literally just talking about, Brandon Hagel. Both of them come in as kind of third line players, and they are now rebuilding that depth cheaply to go on another run here. So Tampa, I knew that they were going to do some tinkering to their depth, and they've gone out, they've done that, they've addressed it. So Tampa is also looking scary. And then obviously yesterday, one of the biggest fish out in the pond ended up getting dealt, and Claude Giroux going from Philadelphia to Florida. And we all knew that was happening, right? Like that was for like 3 days that trade was talked about as going down. Essentially, just Giroux had to get that 1,000th game in there, and then they could finally move forward with the trade. And that's what happened. Giroux goes for a 5th and a couple of younger players, and then Owen Tippett is the player going back along with a 1st and a 3rd. I thought that was kind of a light return for Claude Giroux. That said, when a player has a full no trade, you don't really have much leverage if you're Philadelphia. So I guess you got to be happy getting a player who you believe could grow into being he's a former top 10 pick, could be a top 6 goal scoring winger, an additional 1st round pick and a 3rd round pick, but they're future picks. They're not even from this year, which I thought was kind of interesting as well. But yeah, lots of movement going on in this division. But Florida, like, which team do you think got better this week? Let's say, was it the Maple Leafs by bringing in Giordano and Blackwell? Is it Tampa by bringing in Paul and Hagel? Or was it the Florida Panthers bringing in Robert Hagg, Claude Giroux, and they also went out and got Ben Sherrod as well?
This is a tough one because many people think it's Florida, but let's not forget what Florida just lost, right? Aaron Ekblad confirmed to be out for the rest of the regular season. I'm sorry, you're not replacing an Aaron Ekblad with Robert Hagg and Ben Sherratt. It's like
No.
those two players do not equate to an Aaron Ekblad. But I think I'm more leaning towards Florida because I just feel like the players they got, like Giroux is going to be a really good player for them. It's really going to help that second line scoring because that's likely where he's going to slot. Tampa wasn't too far behind just because they're already a good team that got better. With the Leafs, it's just like it's a toss up, right? Giordano can fit. We know if that Brody pairing works, it's going to be a big win for the Leafs, but people are also wondering if that was exactly what the Leafs needed as well. But I think it's more so Florida just because Claude Giroux, I think, can be a good he's been on a bad Flyers team for the last few years.
Yeah.
He's going to a good I've seen how the Panthers have just added players in trades and they just spark. Like their
It
team just
worked.
gets a massive Carter Verhaeghe, Mason Marchman, Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, like Anthony Duclair. These guys were all traded away, and they're just fine. This must be something in that Florida Sunshine State, I tell you.
Yeah, it's got to be, man. It's got to be, and it's tough. It makes it so much more difficult for Toronto, who desperately needs to get out of the first round. Like they need to do it. They got to finally get out of the first round, and I know it's going to be difficult. And yeah, okay, they lose a 7-game series at Tampa Bay. Like, of course, Tampa Bay's the better team, but it doesn't matter. You've had 5 previous years to do it. Right. So it's so difficult when you look at it. And this whole division just got so much stronger. Boston, too, obviously adding
Oh yeah,
Hampus Lindholm. Can't forget about Boston, getting themselves a solid top 4 defenseman to add to their group. And I'm sure they're not done either. I could see them being interested in trying to also add that Jake DeBrusk trade could happen at some points. I think a hockey deal would make sense for them because they're still in the hunt. They're going to make the playoffs and they're going to want to try and do some damage. So, it was a real interesting week, and I think I don't even know who the winner is, but I think I am going to say Florida right now, just because they added more bigger, like Ben Sherratt. I understand they did lose Aaron Ekblad. I'm not really factoring this in. I'm just thinking about the names that they
yeah.
brought in: Ben Sherratt, Aaron Ekblad, Robert Hagg. Like those or not Aaron Ekblad, Claude Giroux.
Pleasure.
Claude Giroux, Robert Hagg, like they brought in some really good players. And once Ekblad gets back, which will be in the playoffs, and it's not a Muzzin situation. Ekblad can get dropped in. I think he'll be fine. Whereas Muzzin, you're a little bit more hesitant about it. And he's going to return for the first round, they say, about midway through the first round. He should be ready to go. I think that is a team that really added. They really did add some quality players. The question that I have, and it always gets talked about around the deadline, especially when you have a team that's rolling like Florida, is like, if you make too many big deals like that, does it kind of ruin the chemistry that your group has built throughout the season? Like that's the only question that I guess I would have there, because you're adding to the blue line, you're adding up front into your top 6. They weren't necessarily weak positions for Florida. You're bolstering it, you're strengthening it, but is it going to throw the chemistry off at some point? You know what I mean? Like we've seen that happen at times. This does happen. And I was listening to my show that I wasn't on, Leafs Lunch, the other day, where Mike McKenna, former NHL goaltender, was on it, and he said, "Yeah, that's a real thing. That could totally happen." And he's been in situations where that has happened. They make a big splash. They had a top 6 player. It just doesn't gel, doesn't go right, doesn't go well, and then nothing happens. I always think back to when the Vancouver Canucks brought in Matt Sundin in that final year for them. It didn't go well. They thought, yeah, you add Matt Sundin, they're going to go all the way to Stanley Cup. Like they finally got that, another solid center behind Henrik. They're going to go. Didn't really happen. It kind of threw off something throughout that lineup.
Quite a few teams try to make these big swings. I mean, you think about when Joe McGinley was getting traded to like the Bruins, and like that didn't really work out. When Yager went to the Bruins and it didn't really pay. Like when teams make these big trades, it's sometimes they think about the name and what that player has done, but then as you said, like the dynamic of the team might not fit to what that player is bringing.
Right.
With Florida, it kind of just feels like I thought maybe they would have focused more on the defensive side of the game because they can score with anyone right now. They have the depth to do it. I just thought maybe you would want to focus on your defense a little bit more. I thought, and you look at what the pressure. I also think now because that team traded away first round picks up until I think 2024.
Yeah.
Like the pressure on this team now to say, guy. I mean, look, they got the biggest vote of confidence I've seen out of any NHL team recently. I mean, other than Tampa. So like their GM is telling them, "Hey guys, we invested a
Win.
lot." Like it's like
win
he's
now.
not saying it, but he kind of said it with these trades where it's like we believe in you guys, but also realize that we kind of just took a massive swing. We've seen baseball teams do the same thing where they go and throw out so many of their prospects, and it kind of ruins their path after a few years because for Florida, in some ways, some of these guys are not going to come back because they got a lot of guys on expiring deals. They can't sign them all because they're all going to go and find bigger and better contracts elsewhere. So they're kind of really betting on this year, and that's a tough thing to put on a team because and you're hoping that the guys they bring in will kind of alleviate the pressure that now this group might feel that they're under.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be interesting to see, which of these three teams make a deal tomorrow. Because I don't know if I think, like you said, the Aaron Ekblad is a pretty big injury. You could bring in some money there, right? They did get Claude Giroux's salary at half retained, so they still have a little bit of cap space to work with, where they could bring in another defenseman to kind of round things out there. And Tampa, they always find a way to do something. I don't know if they've got much room now to do anything. And then Toronto still has some space. I believe. Do you have that tweet you want to bring up? I guess now we could kind of
Yeah,
bring
I
it up
was
here.
thinking maybe we take a quick break first because we
Sure.
do have to hear from two more of our show sponsors. So let's quickly take that break, and then we're gonna talk about kind of tomorrow, the Monday trade deadline, which teams might still we know the Leafs might still look to make some moves, and other teams are kind of a little late to the party. So let's see how many of them maybe get into a little bit of a desperation situation and have to make a move. So let's hear first from our show sponsors, and we're gonna start with our good friends over at Built Bar. Obviously now we're getting into springtime's coming, so we're kind of hoping that we can get back to doing things outside, getting a little more active after winter where we're kind of stuck inside a little bit. But obviously one way you can keep yourself in check with your especially your New Year's resolutions is by having a couple of Built Bars. Um, they're the first ever. They have these puffs. They're the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. Not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with these. They're usually about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, which is pretty significant when you compare them to other protein bars. They have many delicious flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. So at Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They also make it delicious first and figure out how to make it healthy. And they usually pull it off every time. So make sure you go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. So that's LOCKed15 for 15% off at built.com. And of course, it's that time of year again. It's college basketball tournament. Man, there are some big upsets going on in college basketball. A lot of people are doing really, really well with their bets or not so much. If you're going to BetOnline, you get all the latest odds, contests, and player props. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and favorite casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. I'd like to welcome you back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. And man, Monday's show is going to be something else because I feel like, we always say, what deals are going to be left? What deals are going to be left? There are some teams that are late to the dance right now.
Yeah.
We're still hearing rumblings out there about players who could be moved. And now many are wondering, I mean, let's bring it back to Leafs Nation here for a second. First off, why the heck did the Leafs make this Giordano trade at 3? Well, we're hearing it's done, and it took almost 2 hours for us to hear the details. So to help with that, I'm going to pull up a little tweet here because this is a great thing about about YouTube is I can have a little bit of help,
Little visual. Little
little
visual.
visual to help us with this. I'm going
And
to also
if you
zoom
are
in a little bit.
if you're a listener, you can go follow us on YouTube and you can get these great visuals as well. Locked On Leafs on YouTube. We're almost at 250. I saw you guys. You guys did a good job getting some numbers.
A good thing, Mike, I was going to say, good
Numbers up
thing is
there.
when you were gone, we didn't lose subscribers.
That's right, and that's all we try to do. We like to gain a little, lose none. That's
My-
our slow but steady.
My life philosophy, you stay in the green, don't go in the red. Always stay
Hey,
in the green. So
hey,
we're looking
that's our boys at betonline.net probably like that philosophy.
definitely. So here's a little note here from Cap Friendly about why the Giordano trade, why it made sense for the Leafs to wait until 5 p.m. So wait until 5 p.m. Eastern to complete the Giordano trade definitely provides some additional flexibility for the Leafs in terms of creating the cap space needed to fit him under the cap. It would give them the benefit of saving Clifford and Mrazek's cap space if they clear. Obviously, both were placed on waivers today. So how does this work? The cap is calculated daily at 5 p.m. Teams can temporarily exceed the cap between 5 p.m. spans. Toronto can exceed the upper limit after 5 p.m. today. Wait for waivers those players to clear waivers for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Setting those players down to be compliant for 5 p.m. tomorrow. So basically, between 5 today on Sunday and 5 p.m. on Monday, they can go over. They can exceed the cap, but then they got to get back under by 5 p.m. And now the Leafs also don't play until Wednesday, so they got the little benefit here of, all right, we're not playing for the next few days. If they're putting Mrazek on waivers, it kind of makes it seem like uh, Jack Campbell is closer to a return as well.
Hold on. Have we talked about that yet? I think you just kind of dropped that out of nowhere.
Well, I know he's kind of skating. I heard that he was skating.
I'm at Mrazek. The fact that Mrazek's on waivers, we teased it, but I don't think we've
We
actually
did.
talked about that yet.
Well, and we're getting to this, Mike, because when we're talking about putting Mrazek on waivers here, because it's just like the Leafs only have Eric Shalgren right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're putting Mrazek on waivers, you're kind of under the belief that you can either get another deal done for a goaltender or this guy, I should also mention the Leafs made a signing today. Harry Shattery,
Yeah.
who used to play, he actually played for the Florida Panthers and the San Jose Sharks a little while ago. It's been a little while since he's been in the NHL. Some of you who watched those overnight Olympic games for Finland would have saw that he went 5-0, so he was perfect in the Olympics. He had a one goals against average and a .962 save percentage. He was even better in the KHL. He had a .926 save percentage, a 2.02 goals against average for the KHL's Novosibirsk, Sibir. I believe that's how you say it.
Sure.
So this is a guy who, again, he's 32 years old, so he's not a young guy. He's got some experience. Whether the Leafs are banking on this guy to be the backup it just doesn't seem like that's what they're trying to do. I know that Joseph Woll's injury probably
Yeah.
gets them a little worried about their goaltending depth, and they saw what they liked during the Olympics. But this guy's also got to clear waivers. It's the other.
Yeah, he does. That's kind of the interesting part. But I mean, like this guy, I don't think he's going to come here and be the savior. That said, I didn't think the same thing about Eric Shalgren. He's been pretty good. But no, I think this has more to do with Joseph Woll's injury than anything, to be honest with you. Like he signed like a league minimum deal. He's going to come over here, probably chuck him in the minors and see what's up. Might get a sniff, see like, okay, what does he have in him? If, Jack Campbell doesn't get back in time, or if Petr Mrazek doesn't clear and then doesn't end up also getting traded, which is still also a possibility. I don't think that he's going to come in here and they're looking at him as like the answer to goaltending at this point. No. I don't think that's going to be the case. He's 32 years old. He's not a young cat either, right? But let me just see, because I think I also saw, so he played 9 games with the Florida Panthers back in 2017, 2018, and had a .911 save percentage in those 9 games, went 4-4 with a .292 goals against. So that's his lone and only NHL action. But decent AHL results the following year, or that same year, had a .927 and a .230 in the AHL. But like you said, his past few years down in the KHL have been very, very nice. And we've seen a lot of goaltenders in the KHL cross over the pond and have success, right? We think of Vasilevsky, obviously, Igor Shesterkin, Ilya Sorokin. Now, I'm not to say that he's going to be any of those players, don't get me wrong, but we've seen that KHL to NHL jump be made more than a lot of other leagues, at least as of late. So will he get a look? Perhaps. I'm not sure if this is much more than a depth add.
I think the fact that it's a one-way deal too, like guys like, oh, why would he come now? Well, at least they're going to give him a guaranteed one-way deal, even if he plays in the AHL. I think that's
just money. At that point, it means that it's just a guaranteed for him to get that money, right? So it's just, there's no point in him coming over for not, or to get a two-way deal.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it doesn't make sense. And you also think about teams that are looking maybe to potentially put in a claim. Are like some
Is he
teams
gonna come
don't
over?
want to? Pardon?
Well, also, if I'm the team that wants to put in a claim, like let's say Arizona wants to put in a claim. Like, I'm calling his agent and saying, if we put in a claim, is he going to come? Like, you don't want to get into Bakov situation where you claim the guy and then he's like, I'm not reporting. I'm done. I'm re-retiring. Like, you don't want that situation to occur where the guy then just decides, never mind, I'm not coming. I only want to play for Toronto. You know, what if this is a Jason Spezza situation? Remember last year, he was placed on waivers, but it was very publicly known to everybody, look, if you claim him, he will retire. He only wants to play in Toronto, so don't bother. I wonder if the same situation applies here, where, you know, if I'm a GM, I would be calling saying, if we claim him, will he report? If the answer is no, don't make the claim. If the answer is yes, go ahead, make the claim. And I wonder if he was willing to play elsewhere, could he have signed elsewhere? Although this is the first time I really ever heard of his name, so I don't know how many teams were interested in bringing him in. And if that's the case, why would they sign him? Why would they sign him? Or why would they claim him, I guess, to play him in the NHL if they had no thoughts on bringing him out of the KHL anyway?
Yeah, and so like putting Mrazek on waivers, this is where is he easier to trade if he gets claimed off waivers? Likely, yes.
So two things, right? So Mrazek going to waivers, I think, is two-pronged. One, that means that they can take $1.25 million of his contract, and tomorrow at 2 p.m., they could send him down to the minors, bury that, and that makes them eligible for the Giordano trade, because then that means by 5 p.m. they'll be under the cap, right? So that's what they have to. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, how often do we see guys go through waivers, clear waivers, and then you see them get traded for like nothing, right? For like a conditional 7th round pick. But to be able to allow, if someone goes through waivers, they can call them up, send them down, you know, willy-nilly as you want. How many times do we see that happen?
Quite often.
So that could still be an option. Waivers clear at 2 p.m. each day. So if he goes unclaimed by 2 p.m. tomorrow, a team could look at that and say, you know what, we could give him a shot. We can send him down to the minors and not worry about losing him, or we can play him and see if he can refine his game with this club. Maybe they go out and they, you know, I will give you a 7th round pick or conditional 7th round pick to bring him in. And now that he's already cleared waivers, it makes it a lot easier to make that deal. It's more of a palatable move for someone to bring in because they can bury that money down in the minors. Now, he's still going to be owed that money because they're guaranteed contracts. And it's a one-way deal. So whoever brings that in is going to have to pay that money, pay him the 3.8 million or whatever else he's owed. But in terms of the cap, it won't really be as big of an issue because you can send him down. You can manipulate the cap, I guess, going forward.
Yeah, and the likelihood he gets claimed is
Is
quite
low.
it's quite low because first off,
That would
3.8 million.
that would be best case scenario for Toronto, by the way.
Yes.
Can we say that? Best case scenario is a team claims him and they just take that contract off the books. Like, I know it would suck because that does take away from the goaltending depth, but you've got $3.8 million in a guy who just has zero confidence right now. You don't believe in right now. You're starting a 25-year-old rookie who is literally up until this year never played a single game in the NHL. And you've given him 3 straight starts ahead of Petr Mrazek because you just don't believe in him right now.
And
He's
he
taking
hasn't
over as the
performed.
back. He just hasn't performed. So, the best case scenario is, the experiment failed and you move on without having to give up an asset to get rid of that contract. So that would be best case scenario. I don't see it happening. If it does, Toronto fans should be excited, not upset that Mrazek gets
That'll
claimed off.
be the best move of the trade deadline for the Leafs if they are
It
able
would
to
be
move.
like going forward, absolutely. And then Toronto with that contract cap completely off the books, even because they can only bury 1.125 in the minors,
Yeah,
right? Which would mean that there's still like $2.5 million that they'll still have on the books of Mraz's contract. If that's completely gone, now you've opened up even more space to make a move to go out and get another goaltender or someone else, a forward. You can make another move with an extra $2.5 million on top of that already 1.125 that's been buried. So it would be best case scenario. I just don't see it happening. So just Leaf fans, if you see Petr Mrazek gets claimed tomorrow at 2 p.m.,
do the happy
celebrate.
dance.
Don't be upset. Celebrate.
Yeah,
Do it.
because people go like, oh, now they just threw away a player or play. I heard someone go, well, now free agents won't want to come to Toronto. Well, guess what? If you perform, you're not getting put on waivers, guys. Like,
Nope. Yeah, I don't see Michael Bunting going on waivers.
look, look at the guys who have been put on waivers this season. The only one, I mean, Ryan Zingle didn't really do anything to get himself put on waivers, other than the Leafs just wanted that flexibility. That's it. Other than that, like if guys are getting put on waivers right now by the Leafs, it's either cap reasons or you're not doing anything. Like Nick
Right.
Ritchie got put on waivers because he was not performing.
No.
Leafs did him a favor by trading him to Arizona. Like, let's be real here. He would have been sulking in the minors if they didn't make that trade. So I think the Mrazek situation is something to really watch out for, because you also wonder what else are the Leafs going to do, right? You know, is this it for them? Like, I'm looking at this Leafs team right now. I'm going to bring up the Nashville game just a little bit because I did watch it, and just seeing also the way they played, the stats. That JT line worries me. That second line, I don't, especially if Andre Kasha is not available. Who knows what his situation like? I know we're talking about this and they haven't been on the ice. We don't know what his situation is like. That second line took a beating
Yeah.
against Nashville. We saw Tavares play much better when he was taken away from William Nylander too. Like, I think that's something that's not getting it was talked about beforehand when the struggles were happening, but now that you see how JT played away from William Nylander and then they got brought back together and it didn't, it's still the same. It's a little concerning for me, and I'm wondering if Kyle Dubas sees that as well. And maybe there's a reason why that first round pick is being held so dearly to his heart right now.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, no, you can't have this for a rental.
Yeah, he's not moving that first round pick for rental, that's for sure. Before we get out of here, Dave, for those who are listening at this point, it's trade deadline day. There's only a few hours for the Maple Leafs to make a move before finally solidifying what the roster will look like as they make an attempt to go and, well, winning the Stanley Cup would be awesome, but getting out of the first round, I guess, is step one. If you take a look at maybe the trade bait board, is there a player that you think the Maple Leafs could still add, or do you think there's still something or someone out there that you would like to see the Maple Leafs maybe do something on? Like, is there a name out there or a position group that you still believe the Leafs should be able to firm up by the time the 3 p.m. Eastern trade deadline comes and goes?
This is so tough because, okay, maybe if the Leafs do decide to move that first round pick, would someone like a Ricard Raquel? I like what he can bring to that second line. He's the kind of ideal guy that you can look at. Some people are still on the Max Domi train.
I'm not there.
Unless you get teams, I'm not bringing in Max Domi at 5.3, and I ain't giving Columbus much because they want to pretty much get rid of this guy. Like I don't see that one really working out. You know, some people wonder if maybe Vegas, who needs a goaltender badly. I mean, I don't know if they need it badly where they'll take Petr Mrazek from us because they got so many cap issues themselves. But with Robin Lehner's situation uncertain, maybe they'll consider that deal as well. I like Ricard Raquel is such an interesting name, but I think that's just going to be aiming too high for the Leafs. They got to find a player that's cheap but also effective, and that's going to be really tough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they kind of got something. I mean, effective might be a bit of a stretch, but like Colin Blackwell is someone who's super cheap, right? Like he comes in, he's only making I think 725, so he's making league minimum. He's got 16 points through 37 games this year, so he's having a pretty decent season as somebody who's more of a bottom six player. But can they find someone who can be a middle six player? And one of the names who I kind of actually taking a peek at right now, and I wonder what Winnipeg's gonna do, and if Paul Stastny is available, like that's the type of guy who I think would fit well with this team. You know, Paul Stastny, somebody who is can play the wing, can play center. He's definitely a guy you can put up in your top six. He can also play, I guess, in your middle six if you really wanted him to. Could play on the kind of anchor a second unit power play, I guess, would be a better option than Mikheyev's and Engvall's that they've tried on the second power play. I wonder if Winnipeg is willing to move on from him. Like I know they're kind of in the mix there in the West, and it
Well,
looks
they're
like
kind of making moves right now
well, they
too.
just acquired
Mason Appleton from
Mason Appleton, yeah, back from Seattle. So are they gonna go for it? Like I maybe, but what are they right now?
Saravalli said they have multiple picks on the table for Andrew Kropp, who's kind of like their biggest trade chip right now. Stastny would be an interesting name. I just don't know if the salary would work out well and what they're looking for in return as well. I know that for Andrew Kopp, they want a first. And
Yeah,
I don't think the Leafs. I think if the Leafs are trading that first, it's for a guy with term. I
yeah,
think they're saving that for a bigger bullet. Some might think, oh, but they trade away 3 picks for Giordano. Yes, they did. But I think if they're going to go for a guy with term, they got that first round pick and maybe some prospects that they can look at moving. Because we see that those deals can happen as well. Um, I just think that the Stastny one, Winnipeg is such a hard team to read right now because they're in that place you don't want to be. They're in the in between.
yeah. They're right now 68 points with 19 games to go. They currently trail Vegas, who only has 18 games. So they have a game in hand on Vegas, but are
It's
still down about 4 points to them for the final wild card spot. But also, they got two teams, so they got a leapfrog. And one of those teams is Dallas, who has 2 games in hand on Winnipeg. So they're in a tough spot. And, you know, the Ducks are kind of falling out of it at this point. I think the Jets are maybe the last team who are battling for that wild card spot, along with Vancouver, Dallas, obviously Vegas, Edmonton is still going to be in there, and Nashville a little bit here, I suppose. Like those guys are battling for those final few positions, and Winnipeg. If they decide that they're gonna try and compete, which it looks like they might be, I think it's probably gonna be an all or nothing, right? Like either they move on from Stastny and Kopp, or they don't. Like or did they bring in Mason Appleton because they have a deal in place for Kopp, and maybe that's a replacement there. Like that'd be interesting, but that's the one player who I look at and I'm like, if the Maple Leafs still want to do something and they want to address the forward position at this point, maybe Stastny could be a guy who they go out and maybe pursue. If not him, I don't know. Like, do they try to get a goaltender? Like, I just don't see
I've
it
I've heard
happening.
LeBron said that James Reimer's name is still getting a lot of interest, and he's likely like if you're going to trade for, you're not trading for Marc-Andre Fleury. I think
No.
Blackhawks are not very much like they wouldn't have played Marc-Andre Fleury tonight
Yeah.
if he was being moved. So I
Yeah.
feel like that train has sailed. I know a lot of Leaf fans were kind of hoping that would get done. I just didn't see that as realistic enough because I don't think the Leafs wanted to pay the Blackhawks high prices. Like the Blackhawks had really high prices. If you look at what the Hagel deal was, you do not want to make a trade with them right now. And I think San Jose, they're a team that's out of it. They're a team that is looking to retool. They're not looking to rebuild. So yeah, why would you trade a James Reimer? Well, maybe you'll have aspirations to get an even better goaltender in the offseason. You can take whatever you get from the Reimer deal and plug that into getting a better goaltender.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Even as we sat here and record the podcast, we had like 3 deals go down. Jeremy Lauzon went for a second round pick to Nashville. We're
so getting a trade happening like with the Leafs as soon as this is over. By the way,
probably yes. Scott Wedgwood at like literally 5 minutes ago, going to Dallas for a 4th round pick.
What?
For a 4th round pick?
I actually would have done that if I was the Leafs. Something like a Scott Wedgwood wouldn't have been a bad idea either.
Maybe. Yeah, that was dealt. Yeah, Arizona to Dallas for a 4th round pick, and then we just talked about a mid-round pick also that'll see Mason Appleton go back to Winnipeg, the player who Seattle took from them in the expansion draft. So he goes back for a mid-round pick. So those 3 trades went down as we were recording this podcast,
we better end it here before that we can't even get this episode up anymore.
Yeah, really. Like I guarantee you, there's going to be another deal soon to follow, it sounds like, because there is so much going on right now. I don't know what the heck people are going to talk about, what we're going to talk about on Trade Center. I know Leafs Lunch will be fine because we got the big deal in Giordano to talk about the Mrazek situation, what that could possibly mean. I'll be fine on Leafs Lunch, but for Duthie and all those guys on Trade Center and everybody over at Sportsnet and ESPN's going to have their own show. Might not be a busy day in terms of trades, but it'll definitely be there'll still be a lot to talk about for everyone breaking down everything that happened today and this weekend. So at least all of the trades did wait until tonight. So you can kind of leave everything till tomorrow morning and talk about that until action picks up. As always, literally enough. Like there may be 1-2 trades usually trickle in between like 8 and 12. Yeah. And then between noon to 2,
everyone
you see
wakes
a few more. Yeah, then 2 to 3, boom. You see trade. And then you got them locked in the queue for like about another hour past the deadline, and stuff starts to trickle out. So I still think it'll be a little bit of a busy-ish deadline. I am surprised, just based on everything that we heard, how busy this week actually was. Like there's been a lot of action this week leading up to the deadline, considering we heard from, was it Chris Johnston like less than a week ago, who said, it's eerily quiet, according to one of the GMs. And then boom, you get one trade to the one trade. Josh Manson goes Colorado, and then just start a domino effect. Boom, 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 boom. And now all of those top defensemen who were up on all the trade bait boards, gone one by one. They were just getting checked off. And now even look at like TSN's trade bait board, the trade bait list that was put out a couple of days ago. The top 3 completely gone. Lindholm, Giroux, Giordano, all gone. Nick Paul, gone. Who else we got here? Jack McBain, Owen Tippett, gone. Nick Delorier, gone. Like there's a bunch of these guys who have come off the board, but there's still a lot that need to come off tomorrow as well. So hopefully that does happen, and it'll be a fun trade deadline. It's one of my favorite times of the year. I know it's one of your favorites, and all hockey junkies, it's their favorite time of the year. So buckle up. I'm excited.
Yes, definitely. I think that's time to call for the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Make sure you follow myself at @the_Morassutti, and you can follow Mike at Mickey_Canuck. Make sure you go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button. We are going to be breaking down all the the fallout from the trade deadlines from the Leafs perspective tomorrow. Make sure you go to our YouTube channel, subscribe. Make sure you set a reminder. We'll have that information up there. We'll also be having it on our Twitter account at Locked On Leafs. So we'll be back with another episode then. You can ask us questions. Come and join us for a nice little post-Leafs trade deadline chat. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.